So snail farming can make you money, but only if done right. So many people fail in snail farming from day one just because they don't know where to get the right snails from. In this video, I'm going to be showing you a right place where you can get good snails and what you should look out for when getting these snails.
Joshua Joseph.
Emeka is somebody who just went to a snail training. He went to a workshop. In that workshop, they were divided into separate groups, and he was opportune to join the snail section. And then he learned a lot about snail, but he didn't get some kind of ideas properly just because he joined in late. So he was passionate about the idea and decided that he wanted to venture into snail farming. Then he went and then he bought some snails from some roadside vendor. He created a small pen and then he started taking care of the snails. He bought 50 snails, and after some weeks 35 of those snakes were dead already, and the remaining 15 were either too sluggish and they were not growing at all. Then he decided to find out from one of his teachers. He called one of his teachers and said,
"You guys taught me about snails, that snail is going to be something that is very, very profitable and things like that." I decided to buy about 50 snails, and 35 are dead. 15, I don't even understand what's happening to them.
Then the teacher looked at the snails and told him, "Oh boy, you've made lots of mistakes. This is not the kind of snails that you should be rearing in your snail pen." And then that was a turning point for Emeka. He learned his lesson from the teacher, and then he made a drastic change in his agribusiness and in his snail farm. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through a guide on where you can get the right snails from, so that you don't make the same mistakes that Emeka has made, and so that you profit in your snail farm. Now, there are three major sources of snails. There are three major sources where you can get snails from, and I'm going to be explaining these sources to you. The first source I get snails from is bushy areas. Now, these are snails that are gotten during rainy season. You will see them mostly in the forest areas, in some areas that are bushy or dense, that are dense with trees, some rainy and moist areas. When you go to all those areas, you'll be able to see snails scattered all over the places. And you see, sometimes you go to some villages or some rural areas, you see small children going out, and the time of getting these snails is in the morning, early in the morning or late at night. So you go to these areas, you look around, you get snails and things like that. So if you plan to get this kind of snails, if you're starting out, you can try this type, because this type of snails, they are free. You get them free of charge. If you can move around in the night, around some bushy areas, or early in the morning, you just go with your torchlight, you just go with a sack, and then you just carry the snails and then put them inside the sack, and then bring them back home, and then you start taking care of them. But the danger of this type of sourcing is that there's a very high tendency that you pick snails that are not healthy. That's where Emeka got his snails from. He bought it from the vendor, and the vendor maybe had already gotten it from these bushy areas. So you must have the skill of knowing how to pick matured and healthy snakes if you choose to use this kind of route to get snails. You have another place where you can get snails from, and these are from commercial breeders. If you plan to take your snail farm commercially, we have people who breed snails, and if you go to these areas, there are some areas in Ibadan, in Benin, in Delta, and you go to these areas, you tell them that you're looking for snails that are like 8 months or like from 5 to 10 months matured, and then you get these snails, because these snails are the snails that the breeders have taken care of by themselves. If you're able to meet these people, these breeders, you go to their locations, you ask them, you tell them that you're looking for this type of snails, and you check for the health of the snails by sometimes you sprinkle water and observe the movement of these snails. So we look for snails that are matured, and the questions that you can ask the breeders, like which type of species. You know, we have different types of species. Some species are very good, they are meaty, they produce very well. Like we have their chatting, how long they have been taking care of these snails, what they have been feeding them with. You have to find out all these things so that you don't end up buying snails that are not what you really want. So make sure you check all these things with the breeders. Another area where you can get these snails is from governmental agencies and some research institutes and some agricultural extension office. You go to these areas. The only problem is that these places, they have limited supply. So you go to these areas and then you tell them that you're looking for snails, and if you book ahead of time, because they can be, you know how governmental agencies are, and then you book ahead of time, you can get these snails, because some of them, they have been tested, and some of them from government support and government supports to farmers. The good thing about this type of like IITA in Ibadan and in Umudike, you can get this kind of governmental agencies. Now the good thing about utilizing these governmental agencies as your source is that they have been tested, the snails have been tested and verified to produce. Another thing is that the governmental agencies, sometimes when they are giving out these snails, they provide guidance, so they are able to explain everything about the snail type, the species type, and what they have been fed with and how to take care of them. That's another good thing about these governmental agencies and some research institutes that provide grants and supports to farmers. So this can be a very, very important way for beginners to start. So what do you look out for when sourcing snails? What's the most important thing that you look out for? The first thing that you look out for is the species size. What is the size of this species? There are different types of species of snail. Like I said, you have the Achatina jatina, we have the Achatina marjanita, and we also have the Achatina felicia. So you have to look at the species size. What is the size of this species that I'm buying? And also another thing you can look out for is the growth rate. You have to look at the growth rate. What is the growth rate of this species that you're buying? You can ask the person selling to you or giving to you and say, what is the growth rate like? How fast has the snail been growing? So that when you're taking care of this snail, you know that it's producing and then it's growing you know that it's growing very fast to produce what you want it to produce. Another thing that's important to check out for is the egg production. You have to find out and know the effectiveness of that snail in producing eggs, because automatically that's what you want. You want snails that can produce egg for your pen. That you check all these things and then ensure that you find out what's the species size, what's the species you're buying, what's the size of the species you're buying, what's the growth rate of that snail, and also find out what's the egg production rate like for that snail type. Some mistakes that people can make when sourcing for snails, and the first one is that buying baby snails as breeders. You don't buy baby snails as breeders, you buy the snails that are already maturing, the young snails. That's what kind of snails that you need to buy, and you can buy these snails that are 5 to 8 months old. That's the kind of snails that you want. You don't want a snail that is just a newly hatched snail, because that is not effective for your pen. Also, buying on size alone is not a good factor. You don't just buy because this snail is big or this snail is this kind of size. You have to buy the right snail that is healthy and mature. Another thing is that when you're buying snails, you don't buy snails in dry season, because the snail has been dehydrated and is affected. Snails like environment that is moist and not dry. They don't like heat. Snails don't like heat. Even during transportation, you don't want to transport them in airtight containers. You want places to be free of space so that there can be ventilation for the snails. In the same thing, even in constructing their pens, snails always want ventilation, so they don't want anything heat or dryness as possible. They don't want that at all, so that they can survive and produce what you want for them. So how many snails is advisable for you to start with? If you just want to learn this snail farming stuff, you can start with just 10 for learning, but you don't need to expect any profit. You just want to learn the process and things like that. But an effective number that you can start is like 50 to 100 snails. You want to purchase these snails and then take them to a nice pen. You're looking for the kind of the kind of pens that you can create, or the kind of housing that you can create for your snails. I'll recommend this video above. Make sure you click on that video and then watch different types of housing that you can create for your snails. Now, if you found this video helpful, make sure that you share with an agripreneur or somebody that you think that is starting in snail farming, or if you want to start in snail farming, make sure that you hit on the like button. You also hit on the subscription button, and also click on the notification bell, so that when more videos like this come out, you'll be notified about the video.